When a manipulator wants to control you, they don't go after your strengths, they go after your predictable reactions. They've learned that one specific comment will make you defensive. They know a certain look will make you second-guess yourself, and that a perfectly timed silence will make you so anxious you'll rush to fill it. You feel powerless because you're playing their game, by their rules. Your own emotions are the levers they pull to get what they want. You're like an instrument, and they know exactly which strings to pluck to get the melody of compliance they're looking for. But what if you could just stop playing their game? What if you could become an instrument they have no idea how to play? This guide will break down 10 of Machiavelli's psychological principles that will make you strategically unreachable and turn their own tactics right back on them. The most dangerous manipulators don't look like villains. They seem reasonable, sound mature, and act like they're just trying to help. They use logic as a weapon and your own conscience as a leash. They don't break you with one big, obvious move. Instead, they slowly rearrange your reality, one conversation at a time, until you start doubting your own gut, questioning your memory, and apologizing for things you never even did. It's a quiet, insidious kind of war, fought not on a battlefield, but inside your own mind. We're taught that being a good person means being open, forgiving, and understanding. But to a manipulator, those virtues aren't strengths, they're entry points. Your empathy becomes a resource for them to drain. Your desire for peace becomes the bars of a cage. This is where the wisdom of Niccolo Machiavelli, a guy often mistaken for a teacher of evil, becomes an unlikely but essential tool for survival. Machiavelli wasn't a fan of cruelty just for the fun of it. He was a ruthless realist who wrote down how power actually works, not how we wish it did. He knew that in a world where some people just refuse to play fair, sticking to a strict moral code can get you crushed. As he famously wrote, "One who wishes to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroys him." This isn't a guide on how to become a manipulator. It's a manual for psychological self-defense. It's a battle plan forged in cold logic, designed to help you take your power back. You'll learn to spot manipulators in seconds, to flip their power plays, and to walk through the chaos they create with an unreadable, unflappable calm. The goal isn't to play dirty, it's to understand the game so well that you don't have to play at all. It's time to stop being a pawn and start being the player. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Power. Control your reaction. The first and most important rule in outsmarting a manipulator is this: control your reaction. Your emotional response is the fuel they run on. Anger, frustration, defensiveness, sadness. These aren't just feelings, they're data. When you react, you're showing them your cards. You're telling them what matters to you, what hurts you, and what you're afraid of. In this game, emotional detachment is power. The manipulator's playbook is designed to get a rise out of you. They'll use backhanded compliments, subtle insults disguised as just a joke, or loaded questions. They're fishing for a reaction because your reaction gives them control. If they can make you angry, they can paint you as unstable. If they can make you defensive, they can frame you as guilty. If they can make you cry, they can dismiss you as too emotional. In every case, your predictable reaction lets them control the story, and in turn, control you. Manipulators thrive on drama. When you give them an emotional outburst, you're handing them a win. The Machiavellian counter is to become an emotion vacuum. When they throw a provocation at you, you don't respond immediately. You pause, you breathe, you let the silence hang in the air, and it drives them crazy. They expect a quick emotional comeback. When they don't get it, they get anxious. They start babbling to fill the silence, often revealing their own fears and strategy in the process. Imagine a coworker who constantly makes passive-aggressive digs about your work in meetings. Their goal is to make you over-explain yourself, which makes you look insecure. The normal response is to jump in with, "That's not true," or "I worked really hard on that." The Machiavellian response? Meet their comment with a calm, neutral expression. Hold their gaze for just a second too long, then simply say, "Thanks for that perspective," and turn your attention back to the meeting. Or even better, say nothing at all. By refusing to give them the emotional data they're mining for, you make their tactic useless. Your neutrality is a fog they can't see through. Your composure is a mirror they can't stand to look into. This isn't about bottling up your feelings. It's about choosing not to perform them for an audience that will use them against you. You're keeping the logical part of your brain online, even when the emotional part is screaming. You're no longer defending, you're commanding. Chapter 2. The Weapon of Pressure. Strategic Silence. Once you've started controlling your reactions, you can master the second principle, strategic silence. We're trained to think that silence in a conversation is awkward or means we've lost. We rush to fill those pauses because they make us uncomfortable. A manipulator knows this and uses it as a weapon. They'll ask a prying question, make a wild accusation, or state a demand, and then just stop talking. They're waiting for you to crack under the pressure and start rambling. Your nervous justification is you surrendering your power. They use silence to create a vacuum, confident that your discomfort will force you to fill it. And when you do, you almost always say too much. You explain yourself, you justify your actions, you expose your weaknesses. Meanwhile, they say nothing, letting you talk yourself right into a corner. The Machiavellian counter is to see silence for what it is, not weakness, but a powerful, active weapon. When a manipulator throws bait and then waits, you meet their silence with your own. You hold your ground. You just watch them. This flips the script and reverses the pressure. Suddenly, it's not on you anymore. It's on them. Think about a holiday dinner with that one toxic family member. They accuse you of being selfish, then stare at you, waiting for the fireworks or the tearful defense. The whole table is watching. The predictable move is to argue, listing all the selfless things you've ever done. The strategic move, look at them calmly and say nothing. Let that silence stretch. Let it get uncomfortable. What happens in that quiet is incredible. The accuser, who wanted to be the star of a drama, is now left alone on stage with their own aggression. Other people in the room don't see you as weak. They see you as unshaken. The accuser might even get flustered and say more, digging themselves into an even deeper hole. Soon, their voice sounds like a kid yelling at a brick wall. That silence becomes the echo of their own insecurity. When you use silence, you're sending a clear message. I'm not intimidated, and your opinion of me doesn't have the power to shake me. You force them to confront the emptiness of their own attack. They lit the match, but you chose not to be the kindling. By saying nothing, you make the fire land right back on them. Chapter 3. The Art of Misdirection. Controlled Weakness. This third principle is one of the most counterintuitive moves in the playbook, the display of controlled weakness. Our gut tells us to always project strength, to look smart and in control. We think this earns respect and keeps attackers away. But to a good manipulator, that constant show of strength is just another predictable pattern. They'll just keep testing your armor, looking for a crack. A manipulator often feels most powerful when they think they're the smartest person in the room. If they see you as a direct competitor, they get guarded and secretive, and their tactics become harder to spot. So the Machiavellian counter is to deliberately seem a little less smart, a little less informed, or a little less capable than you actually are. This isn't about being a doormat, it's a strategic trick to make your opponent feel safe. When a manipulator thinks they're 10 steps ahead of you, they get arrogant. And when they get arrogant, they get sloppy. They stop hiding what they want. They over-explain their brilliant plans, assuming you're too simple to get it. Imagine you're in a negotiation with a smug business partner. They're using a ton of jargon and rushing through details to intimidate you and make you feel dumb. The predictable response is to puff out your chest and prove you're just as smart as they are, turning it into an ego battle, which is exactly where they want you. The strategic response? Play the part of the slightly confused but eager student. Ask simple, almost naive-sounding questions. "Sorry, can you run that by me one more time? I'm not sure I'm following." You listen carefully, you nod along, and you let them feel like the brilliant teacher guiding the poor fool. And in their overconfidence, they'll tell you everything. They might brag about a sneaky clause they slipped into the contract, thinking you'd never notice. They might let their real priorities slip because they don't see you as a threat. Meanwhile, you're no fool. You're a quiet observer, gathering intel while their guard is completely down. By seeming weaker, you set a trap where they willingly hand you all the information you need. You let them think they're winning the battle, which allows you to win the war. Chapter 4. The Currency of Power. Information Asymmetry. The fourth principle is all about creating information asymmetry. In any power dynamic, knowledge is currency. The person with more information has the edge. Manipulators get this instinctively. One of their favorite moves is information control. They'll forget to include you on a critical email, then swoop in at the last minute to save the day when a problem pops up, making you look incompetent and making them look like a hero. They thrive on knowing more than you because it keeps you confused and dependent. The Machiavellian counter is to flip this dynamic on its head. Your goal is to know everything about them, their patterns, their desires, their triggers, while they know as little as possible about you. You guard your personal life like a fortress while quietly picking the locks on theirs. This starts by becoming a master observer. You listen more than you talk. You notice what makes them tick, who they talk to, what their insecurities are. You don't do this by asking direct questions, which would make them suspicious. You just watch and learn. At the same time, you become a ghost. You stop oversharing. You give vague, non-committal answers to personal questions. If they ask about your weekend, it was quiet. If they ask for your opinion on something, you say, "It's interesting," and then ask what they think. You become an information black hole. Data goes in, but nothing comes out. This creates a deep sense of uncertainty in the manipulator. They rely on predictability, and you've become a total blank slate. They don't know your weaknesses because you never show them. They don't know your plans because you never announce them. And most unsettling of all for a control freak, they don't know what you know about them. You don't need to show your hand. In fact, you must never do that. The mere possibility that you figured them out is enough to shift the power. They'll start second-guessing their own moves, wondering if you're setting a trap for them. That uncertainty will choke them, and their games will become hesitant and weak. If a light bulb is going off in your head right now, and you want to keep building this psychological armor, take a second to subscribe. This isn't just about learning tricks, it's about rewiring your brain to protect your peace and take back your power. Sharing this video could also be the lifeline someone you know needs to escape a bad situation. Now, let's get to the next level. Chapter 5. The Rules of Engagement. Never fight on their terms. The fifth, and maybe most liberating principle, is to never fight on the manipulator's home turf. A master manipulator is an expert at framing. They create lose-lose situations where any move you make is the wrong one. They set psychological traps, and your predictable reactions are what springs them. It's the classic damned if you do, damned if you don't setup. A partner might say, "Oh, it's fine. Go out with your friends. I'll just stay here all alone. Don't worry about me." If you go, you're a selfish jerk. If you stay, you've rewarded their passive aggression, which means they'll do it again. You lose either way. It's their game, and it's rigged. And if you argue, "You're trying to guilt trip me," they just play the victim. "I can't believe you'd say that. I was just being supportive." The Machiavellian counter is to refuse to even step onto the battlefield they've prepared. Instead of playing within their trap, you change the game. You can do this by delaying your response, reframing what they said, or just ignoring the bait. Let's go back to that scenario. They say, "Go have fun, I'll be fine here alone." The predictable response is to engage with the emotional guilt trip. The strategic response is to sidestep it completely. One option, delay. Don't answer right away. Say, "Let me think about that for a second," and leave the room. This kills the tension they're trying to build. When you come back, the emotional peak is gone, and you can deal with it logically. An even more powerful option, reframe it. Respond with a calm, cheerful tone. "That's great. I'm so glad you're taking some quiet time for yourself tonight. That's so important. I'll be back around 10. You're taking their words at face value, completely ignoring the manipulative subtext. It robs them of their victim card. They can't argue with you because you're just agreeing with what they said. They're left holding their own passive aggression with nowhere to put it. By refusing to fight on their terms, you show them that their attempts at emotional blackmail don't work on you. Over time, they'll see you as a target that isn't worth the effort and will often go look for someone easier. You win, not by out-arguing them, but by refusing to argue at all. You're not a piece on their chessboard. You're the player who just got up and walked away from the table. Chapter 6. The Scarcity Principle. Psychological Distance. The sixth principle is about mastering psychological distance to fight one of the manipulator's dirtiest tricks, intermittent reinforcement. This is that hot and cold behavior that gets you hooked. First, they love bomb you with praise, affection, and attention. It's a huge psychological high. Then, right when you get used to it, they pull away. They become distant, critical, or just go silent. That sudden withdrawal creates a painful void. Your brain, which got addicted to the dopamine rush of their approval, goes into withdrawal. You get anxious and confused, desperate to get the good feeling back. You start picking apart your own behavior, wondering what you did wrong. This is exactly what they want. They've trained you to see their approval as a rare and precious thing, and now you'll do anything to get it back, usually by giving up your own needs and boundaries. Their coldness only has power because you chase them to get the warmth back. The Machiavellian counter is to flip the script by creating your own strategic scarcity. You become a mystery they can't solve. When they pull away, you don't chase. You don't text them asking if they're mad at you. Instead, you create even more distance. You get busy with your own life, your hobbies, your friends. You become less available, not as a punishment, but because you actually have a fulfilling life without them. If they go from texting you 24/7 to leaving you on red for a day, the normal reaction is to double text them into oblivion. The strategic response is to do nothing. Let the silence sit there. Even better, when they finally do reach out, maybe you're too busy to reply right away. Your response time gets a little longer. Your answers get a little shorter. This completely reverses the dynamic. Their withdrawal was meant to make you feel needy and powerless, but by not reacting, you signal that their absence doesn't really affect you. By creating your own distance, you become the scarce resource. Now they're the ones left wondering. They start thinking, wait, why aren't they chasing me? Don't they care? Did they find someone else? You've taken the tool they used against you, uncertainty, and turned it back on them. You're no longer the one anxiously waiting by the phone. You're the one they're hoping to hear from. You're not playing hot and cold. You've just shown them that your world is more interesting than their drama. You've proven that you don't need their warmth to feel whole, which makes them impossible to control with the threat of their coldness. Chapter 7. The Unflattering Reflection. Mirror and expose. Ready for an advanced move? The seventh principle is to mirror the manipulator's behavior right back at them. The goal isn't to play their game, but to expose how absurd it is. Manipulators hate seeing their own reflection. Their tactics only work if they get to be the calm, strategic one, while you're the emotional, predictable one. When you calmly reflect their own strategy, the whole illusion shatters. This isn't about mocking them. That would just start a fight. It's about adopting the form of their tactic without the emotional baggage. It forces them to see how ugly their own strategy is, and most people can't stand that. Let's run through a few examples. If a manipulator is using over-the-top fake flattery to get something, love bombing, the normal reaction is to either fall for it or get awkward. The mirror defense is to match their energy with your own, but with a hollow, almost clinical tone. That is so incredibly nice of you to say. You are truly the most thoughtful and generous person I have ever met. When you say it calmly, it exposes how empty their own words are. If they're playing the victim, sighing about how everyone is against them to make you feel guilty, the mirror defense is to reflect their helplessness back to them. You might say, with a detached, concerned voice, "It sounds like you feel completely powerless in this situation. That must be very hard." By labeling their self-pity without judgment, you're holding up a mirror. It forces them to either own it or drop the act. If they're firing rapid-fire questions at you to create pressure, you don't answer. You start asking your own questions at the same pace. If they use silence as a weapon, you get comfortable with that silence too. What you're doing here is removing the emotional imbalance they need to operate. They want you to be the emotional mess while they stay cool and in control. By mirroring their tactic with a detached calm, you neutralize their advantage. You aren't starting a fight, you're just showing them this is what you're doing. You're using their own fire to show them the mess they've created. They expect you to be a soft cushion that absorbs their blows. Instead, you become a hard, polished mirror, and the reflection they see is so unflattering, they often have no choice but to back down. Chapter 8. The Chess Master's Gaze. Predict before confronting. So far, we've mostly been playing defense. Now it's time to shift to offense. The 8th principle is to learn to predict the manipulator's moves before they even make them. Most of us live in a reactive state. We wait for the subtle dig or the guilt trip, and then we react. This means we're always one step behind. The manipulator acts, we react. They set the pace, we follow. To really outsmart them, you have to stop being a pawn and start being the player who sees the whole board. This means you stop focusing on their latest stunt and start looking for the underlying pattern. Manipulation is almost never creative, it's repetitive. They use the same handful of tricks over and over because they work. Your job is to become a student of their patterns. Start observing and taking notes, even if it's just mental. Do they always start a fight right before you're about to go do something fun for yourself? What topics do they bring up to reliably get a reaction out of you? Your job, your family, a past mistake? Who do they pull in to create pressure? A friend, a coworker, a child? Once you see the patterns, you can start to predict their moves. For example, you might notice that every single time you have a big win at work, your partner finds a reason to be sad or critical that night. Their pattern is to tarnish your joy, to keep you off balance. Once you can predict the move, you're no longer a victim of it. You can brace for it or even cut it off. Knowing that your success will trigger them, you can walk in the door that evening with a plan. You're not blindsided by their moodiness anymore. You expect it. This proactive stance is incredibly powerful. The manipulator gets their power from surprising and destabilizing you. When you're no longer surprised, you can't be destabilized. You see their move coming a mile away. It's like knowing a card sharp has an ace up their sleeve because you've been watching them fidget with it for the last hour. They think they're running some brilliant covert operation, but you're watching them like a scientist watching a rat in a maze, pressing the same button over and over, hoping for a different result. They think they're the puppet master, but by predicting their moves, you've already cut your own strings. Chapter 9. The Rope-a-Dope Strategy. Make them overconfident. The 9th principle is a masterclass in psychological warfare, made famous by Muhammad Ali. You let your opponent think they're winning. You allow their tactics to look like they're working, which makes them get cocky, reckless, and eventually exhaust themselves while exposing their entire game. Manipulators are often arrogant. They truly believe they're smarter and slicker than everyone else. This arrogance is their biggest weakness. When they think their tricks are working without any pushback, they get bold and sloppy. They stop trying to hide their contempt. Their lies get more obvious. Their gaslighting becomes more extreme. They're so sure they have you under their thumb that they stop covering their tracks. The Machiavellian counter is to fake compliance. You let them win a few small, meaningless battles. If they're trying to guilt trip you into doing a chore, maybe you sigh dramatically and just do it for them. If they're telling a twisted version of a story to make themselves look good, you don't correct them. You're giving them rope. You're letting them believe their power over you is absolute. This is the rope-a-dope. You're leaning on the ropes, taking blows that don't really hurt you, while your opponent is punching themselves out. And while they're celebrating their cheap victories, you're quietly gathering evidence. Their overconfidence makes them show their true colors, not just to you, but to everyone else. They might get so brazen that friends, family, or coworkers who never saw it before finally start to notice. Imagine a boss who loves to take credit for your work. The normal thing to do is confront them immediately, which just starts a he said, she said fight they can easily deny. The strategic approach, let it happen a few times. Document everything. Keep the emails, the drafts, the records. Let them get so comfortable stealing your work that they do it openly in a high-stakes meeting. At that moment, when their arrogance is at its absolute peak, is when you make a move. But often, you won't even have to. Their blatant behavior will have been noticed. A simple, well-placed question from you or someone else, like, "Can you walk us through the data on that slide? I know that was a particularly tricky analysis," can make their whole story collapse because they don't actually understand the work they stole. By letting them get overconfident, you encourage them to make fatal mistakes. Their own arrogance becomes the weapon of their destruction. You don't have to fight them head-on. You just have to give them enough rope to hang themselves. Chapter 10. The Ultimate Victory. Win without ever looking like you fought. Real power isn't about crushing your opponent in a dramatic showdown. It's not about getting revenge. True, lasting power is about making yourself so strategically unreachable that you are no longer a worthwhile target. The greatest victory is when the manipulator willingly leaves you alone because trying to control you is just too much work for too little reward. All the strategies we've covered, controlling your reactions, using silence, managing information, creating distance, are designed to make you a more difficult target. They all lead to this: you become psychologically and emotionally unprofitable to them. A manipulator is an opportunist. They're looking for the easiest way to get what they want. They target people who are predictable, emotionally reactive, and desperate for approval, because those people are the path of least resistance. When you stop being any of those things, the entire cost-benefit analysis of manipulating you flips. They try to guilt trip you, but you meet their words with calm indifference. The tactic fails. They try to provoke you, but you refuse to take the bait. The tactic fails. They pull away, expecting you to chase them, but you seem perfectly happy in your own world. The tactic fails. Over time, they reach a simple conclusion. Trying to manipulate you is exhausting, and it doesn't work. This is the silent win. There's no final confrontation. There's no big victory speech. The win is the quiet stopping of their attempts to control you. They might start avoiding you. They might move on to an easier target. They might even try to get back on your good side now that they see you as powerful, but by then, you'll see right through it. The goal isn't to become a manipulator. It's to understand how they think so you can build a fortress they can't get into. Your unpredictability is the wall. Your emotional control is the moat. Your self-respect is the guard at the gate who refuses to let them in. You win by making yourself an impossible target. You achieve such unshakable inner control that you are no longer vulnerable to their attempts at outer control. This is the art of winning without being seen, and it is the most profound kind of power there is. Machiavelli's teachings are a sharp reminder that the world doesn't always play fair. While we should always try to be good people, we can't afford to be naive. Understanding the dark psychology of manipulation isn't about using it yourself, it's about vaccinating yourself against it. These 10 principles are not a toolkit for revenge. They are a framework for taking back your own mind. They are the building blocks for an inner fortress so strong that no manipulator can ever breach its walls. Power, in its purest form, isn't about controlling other people. It's about having such total control over yourself that no one else can. By mastering these strategies, you stop being a predictable pawn in their game and start being the architect of your own peace. You learn to see the moves before they're made, to neutralize threats without a fight, and to protect your energy from those who would drain it. The ultimate goal was never to play dirty. It was to understand the game so completely that you are finally free from ever having to play it again. You become strategically, psychologically, and mentally unreachable, and that is the ultimate victory.